Hey y'all, welcome back to Reddit to Wire. Today we're going to be looking at Belmont's Grand Slam Pick 4, which is races 5 through 8 on their Thursday card. So let's take a look at the sequence. The first leg of the Grand Slam is the fifth race at Belmont, and it's a 40,000 claimer for non-winners of 2 lifetime 3-year-olds and up on dirt at a mile. And of course, as we know at Belmont, 1 mile races are 1 turn. And there are some new configurations at Belmont following the renovation. So as we go along, we'll want to really take note of those. And also note that this is a 3-year-old and up. So you got 3-year-olds facing older for the first time. And that's always an interesting angle to take a look at. Number 1 is Box Office Warriors, trained by Jamie Ness with Ruben Silvera aboard. Those are normally really hot combination at parks. But coming up here, Jamie Ness is a good claiming trainer. He's been at Aqueduct during the winter as well. This one has been a bit of a disappointment in the last 2. You see, in particular, the last one was an option 40, which I would consider to be a little bit higher class than this particular race, and didn't really factor very well at all. And the one prior as well. Granted, that was on synthetic. But you see the better efforts for this one have been on synthetic and the turf. This, it just doesn't look like this is a very good spot for this one. And maybe the cutback in distance is going to help a little bit, going from 2 turns to 1. That's the only thing I can see that's perhaps promising for this one. But it doesn't look terribly good for me right now for this one. Smoking Heat has been in the starter allowance ranks for quite some time, following a maiden claiming win to get the diploma. Never like to see a horse drop from maiden special weight to maiden claiming, and they had to do it twice with this one to get the win. However, did follow it up pretty well, and has been, a decent factor in starter allowances, getting some class relief here. So I would the dirt to turf angle is a pretty good one. For Chris Engelhardt, who's a good claiming trainer, and you get Manny Franco, the leading rider. So I think there's a lot of things to like about this one, and would be a definite use and a win candidate. Is trained by Charlie Baker, another great New York trainer. And in this particular spot, second off the layoff, he is 1 for 2, and he's 100% in the money. However, looking at this one, that last start was absolutely dreadful. And you can see that they had to drop this one to the maiden claiming ranks, in state-bred maiden claiming ranks, to get the diploma. And the results in the against winners have not been terribly promising. And you see they've continued to drop this horse, and it really hasn't helped. So going back up to 40,000 second off the layoff, it looks to me like that's probably a risky proposition for this one, and I wouldn't use. Uncle Waterflow number 4 is interesting in that I looked at a couple of sources, and this one is not listed as being on a claimable at 40,000, and I don't really understand why. I'll have to believe it's a misprint. But nonetheless, Anthony Dutrow is a good trainer, and Jose Ortiz, great jockey, of course. And coming off a long layoff, this one had some gait issues primarily, it seems like, and gives itself a little bit too much to do. You see breaks late quite often, and obviously that's going to be a big ask, particularly at a 1-turn mile, which we have today. Prior to the layoff, really wasn't doing terribly well and seemed to be in big decline form-wise. So the freshening is definitely going to help. But I'm on the fence with this one, whether or not to use. I think under is probably more likely. You can see some of the better efforts have been around 2 turns. So I'm not sure that this is much of a help, but Anthony Dutrow certainly knows more than me. But if you like this one, use them. I'm just not sure. I think more under is more likely. Keen Air is trained by Will Walden, who's good first off the claim, and this one's coming from Keeneland at the 30,000 and 2L level, and even though this one is for 40, I would consider this almost a drop in class, because Keeneland is a premium meet. A lot of different barns from a lot of different parts of the country coming together. So you have to believe the class level is probably a little higher than it is today. You get Joel Rosario, and you get third off the layoff. So there's a lot of positives here. This one didn't do bad in the last race, and got a pretty decent third in what it was a key race. You see the second place finisher won next out. So moving to a 1-turn mile, I think this one, the distance isn't going to be a problem, being by keen ice, and gives the opportunity to carry the speed a little farther. So I would have to like this one a lot in this spot. And if you get 8-1, I think that's a great price. Dreaming is Smarty was a bit of a surprise in the last one, 26-1, and was a pace factor for the majority of the race. Granted, that was a 2-turn race, so a 1-turn race might be a big help here. You got John Service as the trainer, good filly claiming trainer, and you got Javier Castellano in the irons, Kentucky Derby winning jockey. Congratulations, Javier. John Service is 24% and 58% in the money in this spot with a 168 ROI. You do have other speed in this race, which makes it a little bit of a concern, but that was a pretty good effort last time, being on the front end, and that was a pretty decent field to do it against. So I think perhaps this is a little bit of a class drop, and going 1 turn, I think, might be what the doctor ordered. So at 12-1, you're getting a pretty good price, and I might consider using this one. However, there is other speed to think about, which is number 7, Pressure. He likes to go on the front end, as you can see, and this is third off the layoff. That last effort really wasn't terribly good by comparison, but it was in the N1X level allowance. So you're stretching out to 1 turn, to 1-turn mile, which should be okay. And this one will likely want to be on the front end. And this is a fairly good class drop, and in fact, it's the lowest level this horse has run for. So you'd have to believe that will be a help. You also have to wonder if maybe they're giving up on this one. This one sold at the Keeneland November sale for $350,000, and now they're willing to give up for $40,000. So you got to wonder about that a little bit. And an optional claimer would have offered more protection. So that's a big question mark. But I think this one's a pretty good fit here. But at the price, I mean, I might want to think about the 6 if you like a front-end horse in this race. But still, I think this is one that's a likely use. Loose Goose is another one that is going up for the tag for the first time. And this is a Calumet homebred. And claiming that Pletcher and Rod Ortiz, I mean, connections are A-level, but this one's up for a tag. These horses get beat all the time, and the reason being is if Todd Pletcher gives up a horse to claim the claiming ranks, it means they can't run, because that's not what he does. He's a stakes trainer. So a lot of times it's just, well, let's just get rid of this one, but we'll put our A-level jockey on so people think that we really believe in this horse. And obviously they don't, because this one's up for a tag. So all that said, can this one still win this race? Yes. I mean, you see the buyers are in line, and certainly has a little bit of an edge there. But obviously this one doesn't really know how to win. And I think the fact that coming off the layoff, going right into the claiming ranks is a pretty big indication that they're not interested in keeping this horse. You see that this one has had some trouble learning how to win. Must have had a really soft field at Monmouth to break the maiden, but you see all the other efforts are pretty subpar. So I think you have to use this one. It's damned if you do, damned if you don't. But I would look elsewhere for a winner in this race for the reasons stated. The second leg of the Grand Slam is the 6th race at Belmont. It's a $20,000 claim for 4-year-olds and up, fillies and mares, and it's run on the dirt at 7 furlongs. Always a note is to look for horses who have experience at 7 furlongs, because it is a unique distance. So we'll take a look at that. Number 1 is Vegas Weekend. Has had some checkered results, have been fairly decent at lower classes, and coming off a big class drop, is dropping off from the last effort. Was an optional claimer for $45,000 N1X at 1 1/8. So this is back to 1 turn route to sprint, and it was a key race. So this one has had some decent back class, and he's been claimed a couple of times by some pretty good trainers. So this is one maybe you want to think about. Mertkin Kentamasi, I don't know a whole lot about. But this one would probably be a pretty good fit. I'm thinking under is a little bit more likely, but at 8-1, that's a decent value. You might want to think about that one. Beautiful Karen is Rudy Rodriguez, Ruben Silvera, a good combination together. Rudy Rodriguez is a good claiming trainer, good first off the claim. But this one looks a little light. It's kind of hit or miss. It's definitely need the lead type, and really doesn't hang on too often to get the W. So that's a big issue, particularly in the last race at a lower class. Wasn't able to hang on and faded late, and now you're adding an extra panel. So I would say that's a bit of a red flag, and there's other speed in here I like, so I would pass on this one. Chasing Brand number 3 is also trained by Rudy Rodriguez, and I'd give this one probably a little more hope. Didn't do too bad in roughly the same class level last time, closer favoring track, but that was a pretty decent race. So this one put up a pretty good effort. Took a little while to get going. I would say would be the only thing that I would worry about a little bit. And would probably need a little bit of pace to run to. I'm not sure you're going to necessarily get that here, but I think this one is worth considering, but likely more of a use under than as a win candidate. Greatest Love is trained by Linda Rice with the Kendrick Carmouche board. And Linda Rice, good claiming trainer. One of the things you always love to see is when a trainer claims a horse back. And you can see Linda Rice has done that a couple of times. This one with Greatest Love. She has been very popular in the claim box. You can see has gone, has been up at as high as 40,000 and has gone as low as 10. So they've been moving her up and down the claiming ranks. This one also likes to be on the early pace, and I would say that probably is a little classier than the 3 horse. So, or the 2 rather. But I think this one's very logical in this spot. Linda Rice is good first off the claim, and she obviously is familiar with this horse. So I would expect a really solid effort, and I would definitely use this one as a win candidate. Number 5 is Run Devil. George Weaver, you don't see up in New York that often, but is a good solid trainer. See him more on the Kentucky circuit. Got Eric Cancella board, who's been a very good jockey at this meet. And you're cutting back from a mile to 7 furlongs. So and you see this one's been pretty good, pretty consistent, and has a decent record at 7 furlongs, which you always like to see. And I think the cutback by 1 panel is definitely going to help, particularly when you consider it's a fairly significant class drop from option 45 down to 20,000. So I think this one makes a lot of sense and is definitely a win candidate you have to use. OK Honey is trained by Rob Atras, who's, he has a rather dubious reputation, but he is a very good claiming trainer. And he's getting this one first off, which is a good angle for him. It's also third off the layoff. You can see was in class last time and got an OK second and was beaten chalk. So it's staying in class and got speed favoring tracks the last couple. Maybe there's this one I think is probably a pretty good fit. I'm not as excited about this one as some of the others. I mean, they've got all the advantages of either dropping in class or, but I think you have to think about this one for sure. And it's going to be running a little bit off the pace, I would think. So should be in good position. And I think is a win candidate you have to use. Keen Dancer. Doesn't really display a lot of form and not anything really to talk about. There aren't any good angles from Randy Persaud here, so this one's a pass. And you can say the same for Gringotts. This one you can see was in the N1X allowance level forever before they finally figured out this one can't run. And since they've dropped in the claiming ranks, it hasn't helped either. So I would see this one on the slope out to Mountaineer for the nickel claimers if it were me. So this one's a complete pass. The third leg of the Grand Slam is the 7th at Belmont, and it's an optional claimer, N2X at 45,000 for state-bred 3-year-olds and up. And again, it's run on a dirt mile, so this is a one-turn mile, as we know at Belmont. Number 1 is Aggregation. Chad Brown, Manny Franco. This one has been running against state breds, and that when a trainer like Chad Brown does that, that kind of gives me a little bit of a pause for concern. Obviously, that's a little drop in class from what his charges normally run at. But you can see that despite the first subpar effort at Saratoga, this one has followed it up with a pretty decent effort. And was pretty good early in the 3-year-old season, and then went to the bench. So that's a bit of a concern having that long a layoff. However, Chad Brown is 31% with over 180 days, and we know that he's that this is a solid position for him. So there's really no reason not to use this horse, and is an obvious win candidate. Olympic Dreams is one that's been on a steady rise. You can see, despite that really awful effort on turf to start, since then, moving to dirt has been the ticket, primarily around one-turn miles, but has been getting a little better with every single race. And I think that's certainly a positive. And he's been running, and that's kind of another little thing is that when you do have horses that are favored coming off layoffs versus horses that are salty who've been out there, you kind of got to give them a little bit of an edge. Just won the N1X allowance level, so I would consider that to be a positive and a career high buyer. I think this one's a logical use. Mass Marauder is, first of all, up for the $45,000, and that is a red flag that can't be denied. And as soon as I see that, unless there's really special circumstances, most of the time that's an immediate pass because they're willing to get rid of the horse. If you look at this one's record, this would be a hike in class off a pretty lousy effort at the state bred level for $25,000. And it was in the mud, but, it doesn't give you, when you look at this horse's back class, it seems like this one's a little bit on the decline. So I wouldn't think this would be anyone we want to talk about a whole lot. It's probably not. Can't use. Daddy Knows is also up for the tag. Give this one a little bit more consideration because he's been running in lower classes and hasn't done bad at all. I mean, in February in Aqueduct, he threw up a really solid race on the front end, and I would consider this more just a way for these guys. If this one this one is claimed, he gets a nice premium because this horse is running at a little lower level. So maybe that's it. But I think this one you can think about other than a lot more than the 3. Let's put it that way. So the big concern is this one has run at lower class levels, and the majority of the success has been there. So now you're hiking up in class, and while the last race, I guess. It just wasn't terribly good. It might have had something to do with the track being good. You see the two bookended efforts around the win at 16,000 were both on good tracks. So maybe we can give a pass for that. So the bottom line is maybe this one is you want to think about. There is other speed in this race, but on a dry track, this one might be at 8-1. It's one you want to maybe think about. Full Moon Fever is trained by Mark Hennig, and this one just sort of seems to be just not performing. I mean, it's just been okay. They've had some aspirations. This one, they put this one in an ungraded stakes for the state breds, and was okay. And that's really more all you can say about this one. It just kind of hangs around in the class lately. Looked to have a little bit of promise at the Finger Lakes, but Aqueduct wasn't very kind. I mean, got a win in the first start, but after that, the form's just been sort of so-so. This one just sort of seems like it's running around the track, and I'm not willing to invest in. Wild Banker is one that seems to be a pretty good fit here. Going back to one turn, I think, is an advantage, particularly when you consider this one is the sire is Central Banker, who's more of a sprint sire. You get Joel Rosario aboard, and you get a pretty good progression here. Got a win at 32,000, 2 back at a mile and an eighth around 2 turns. So I think the cutback is definitely a positive. I would consider this one to be a logical use and a solid win candidate. Hush of the Storm it's got a Rod Ortiz aboard. That's the first thing you notice. And you see a really good pattern here of pretty consistent efforts. This one just seems to fire every time. The problem is this one comes from way back and gives itself a little too much to do late. Consequently, you see a lot of thirds and fourths and thirds and fourths. Funny enough, they early in this one's career on synthetic got 3 wins, and that's not a surprise because closers win a lot on synthetic. So, but we're on conventional dirt here. Third off the layoff is a pretty decent angle for William Morey. So, and he's a pretty good trainer. I think you definitely want to use this one. Got to worry a little bit about that running style that maybe under is more what you want to think about with this one, but I think it's a logical use for sure. The last leg of the Grand Slam is the 8th race at Belmont. It's a starter allowance for 3-year-olds and up on the inner turf for the mile and a 16th. And you'll note on the configuration that this is kind of a 1.5 turn race. It's not 2 turns anymore. With the renovations at Belmont, I guess that you can see they've added a couple of chutes on the turf course and the outer turf course, that is. So this is a very interesting configuration. So maybe the early speed has a little bit of advantage, particularly the inside post, I would think, starting on a turn. Just something to think about. My Seat Cottage is an early runner, and right on the in the 1 hole, I think is a definite class fit here. Has been running on the front end for the last few and doing pretty well. Has given it up lately the last couple, so that's a bit of a concern. But I think all systems are go here. This one's a class fit and a logical use as a win candidate. Parquetry has been off for quite some time. Barclay Tag's not known for bringing horses off long layoffs to much success. Prior to that, this one ran in a 1 3/8 race at Aqueduct and at the N1X level and really wasn't much of a factor. More than anything else, what I did notice from that race, this horse takes a long time to get going and is more of a grinder, doesn't have that really big kick that you like to see. So coming off a layoff, those type of horses usually are fairly rusty. So I would, you could see the one other layoff from February to May of last year. This one didn't come back with a whole lot of pluck, so I wouldn't use this one. Achilles Heel is trained by Rudy Rodriguez. You got Ruben Silvera aboard. Rudy's a really, a decent trainer. Looks like he's trying to figure out what to do with this one. This one is going back to turf, which he hasn't run at in quite some time, and has been sort of foundering at the starter allowance and claiming level. It's been kind of okay, but not great. It seems like maybe that Rudy is just trying to shake this one up a little bit. So I'm not so sure that this is a tactical move for a great effort. I think maybe it's with other races in mind down the road. So at 20-1, I don't think this one should be expected to factor terribly much. Skylander is one that is coming second off the layoff, which would be okay. But you see that they've been running at lower class levels. They've had to drop this one a couple of times. And the last one really didn't inspire a great effort, albeit on dirt. So they're moving this one back to turf, where it hasn't been in quite some time since Saratoga. Seems to be a little more successful there than on dirt. So perhaps there's something to look forward to. The buyers on dirt lately wouldn't factor in this race, wouldn't be competitive. And you go back to the turf at last one in August at Saratoga, and that would be marginal here as well. So I don't think that necessarily this one is one you want to use. Oregano just broke his maiden at the state level for a maiden 40. That buyer, 66, isn't going to cut it, and it doesn't look like this horse really is improving terribly much. The debut at 4 didn't produce a career high, but that was on dirt. Moving back to turf maybe will help a little bit, but there's other speed in here I like better, and I don't like this one's chances. Timbuktu is trained by Dick Dutrow, who's back after a 10-year suspension, and For those of you who don't know, Dick Dutrow was a great claiming trainer, as well as the trainer of Big Brown in 2008, who won the Derby and the Preakness, and then shit the bed in the Belmont, much to our chagrin. He's got a Rat Ortiz aboard, and Dick Dutrow knows how to get horses going first off. So first off the claim, first with the team, that's a really good angle for him. This one is pretty competitive within this class based upon the back class you look at, N1X level, albeit state bred. But this one's I would consider to be pretty competitive. And you couple that with Dick Dutrow getting this one for the first time, you might expect a little better. Moreover, there's also a little bit of class relief here, and you get a Rat Ortiz. I think this is one that you logically would want to use. Shinsan is a good class fit here. The only issue really is that Barkley Tag just isn't very good with long layoffs, and this one's coming off a long effort off the bench. However, I mean, the tab looks pretty decent. I will consider this one to be ready, and it wouldn't be out of the question for this one to run back. The last couple efforts prior to the layoff were a little on the disappointing side. You can say that, and they were against open company. So I don't know. I mean, I would leave this one to your discretion. 8-1, I would consider to be a pretty good price, and you might want to consider this one as a win candidate. Royal Spirit has decent back class, and you get Flavian Pratt aboard, which you don't see with Linda Rice too often. And this one takes a little while to get going. It's definitely a class fit here, and you can see they had some hopes for this one running in the Kitten's Joy back at 3 years old, and didn't do badly at all. The problem is it really hasn't been that much improvement since then. This one's sort of stuck at the same buyer level and class level. So could you use this one in this race? Of course. I mean, third off the layoff, I think you'll get a positive effort. The problem is this one seems to take a little while to get going, and consequently has a little too much to do late. So I would think this one you could use, but more for your exotics than underneath. Our Country is coming off a freshening, and didn't do bad. Prior to that, was on a steady improve as far as buyers go. You can see every race was a little bit better than the last, which gives you a little bit of concern why they would send this one to the bench after that effort, but the last one rather. And it was a key race too. So that's a little bit of a concern. Mark Hennig is halfway decent with a layoff. So, I mean, this is one you maybe want to consider. Your 6-1 is a pretty good price. I think this one's a fairly square class fit. Looks like comes from behind, and so probably needs some pace to run to. Not sure it's going to happen here, so maybe you think about this one better as under. Great workout. Trained by Mike Maker. Mike Maker loves to claim horses and then stretch them out long on turf. And this one's no exception. You can see that this one had run on turf prior. And so it's not a really big ask to move this one to 1 mile and 1/16 on the turf. You can see the first effort that Mike had with this one. He must have thought something of the horse because he put it at the N1X level right away to protect. So that's a pretty good sign. And it was kind of a mediocre effort in the sprint, but I think it was more, he was probably looking to pointing this horse forward to something. And so while, this horse is kind of iffy class-wise, competing, if you want to take a flyer, it might not be a bad idea. Mike Maker's 1 for 8 in the spot, but he's 75% in the money. So probably under is a better bet. I'll expect, I'll expect third off the layoff to this one to be to display some improvement. I'm just not sure how much, and probably under is more likely. There are also eligibles in this race, as well as as main track only. So you can see the main track in particular is where all the chalk is. So I would use all of them if this comes off the turf. Um, as far as the AEs of if it goes in the turf, I don't like Addicted to You terribly much. And Mauritius is coming off a debut on turf that looks pretty promising, but it was at the 30,000 claim level, so I'm not so sure I would want to be using this one, probably due for a bounce. And Urban Myths is probably the one who has the most, I would consider, the most likely to use. Had a couple of, had a pretty good effort against winners following breaking the maiden. You do note they had to drop this one to a maiden 20 to get the maiden score, but did follow it up with a pretty good starter allowance effort that would be very competitive here. So maybe Urban Myth is one you think about if there's scratches. So here's what our ticket looks like for the Grand Slam. And for those of you who don't know, basically the object of this sequence is you have to pick for the first three races horses that finish first, second, or third. They're all given equal weight. So you can just basically, as long as you pick a horse that's in the money, you're alive until the next race. However, in the final leg, you have to pick the correct winner. So that's how it works. So it's a little softer bet. So obviously, we want to keep the ticket size a little small for that reason. So in the fifth, we're going to use 2-8. In the sixth, we're going to single the 6. In the seventh, we're going to use 1-6. And in the eighth, we're going to use 1-6-7. So that should give us a pretty good spread, a pretty good chance of taking it down, and an economical ticket size. It's based at $1, so that's a $12 ticket. So a different type of wager than we're used to start things off for Belmont, but it looks a little easier to take down. So hopefully we can do so, and that'll get us off and running. We're going to do this every day for Belmont throughout their spring meet. We will have a different sequence to take a look at. Every day they have racing, so be on the lookout for that. We're also going to continue with our Preakness or our Triple Crown series, and we'll do it for the Preakness. We're going to analyze each contender as we did before for the Derby, form, class, speed, and pace. And if you liked the last series, I think you'll enjoy this one as well. And I think you'll get a lot out of it. So we got a lot to look forward to. And if you do like what you see here, of course, please like and subscribe. And I'll be talking to you in the very near future. And until then, be well.